Hello, Steelers Nation, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Steel City Insider podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremy Ritz, alongside publisher of Steel City Insider, Mr. Jim Wexell, and today we welcome Roy Countryman back to the show to talk the Steelers draft. And let's start with the question, gentlemen. Are the Steelers a better team now that the draft is over?
Go ahead, Roy.
I mean, I don't see how you could say no. I think at least on the defensive line, we definitely got some more talented and versatile defensive linemen. You actually seen that depth being so much improved that they released one of their veterans today as well. So we see them, adding to the running back room. So between Jaylen Warren and now Kaleb Johnson. We also have a quarterback now. We're not going to completely flip over the quarterback room for a third straight year. So, to me, it was value after value after value. I know some people were up in arms about an edge rusher in the fourth round, but I mean, we went out and had to trade for a veteran last year, and now we have a guy with upside and starting traits in the fourth round there. So you can't be mad at any pick they made here this year.
Roy, not only do they have a quarterback, they now have the entire Kansas State quarterback room from, what is that, 2019?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Tyler Thompson was Will Howard's mentor, and Jack Sawyer is his best friend, so he's stepping into a nice situation. Yeah, they're better. They've filled holes. I mean, you're not, like Roy said, you're naturally going to get better. You fill holes. You how did Tomlin put it? Retool your physicality, which I agree.
Mm-hmm.
They also enhance the culture. When I was going looking through, I wanted to watch more tape on Sawyer, and I read a little more about Howard. I mean, when you write about these guys, you got to read a little more, read more in depth, find some old stories. The culture is really, start with Derrick Harmon. That's a no-nonsense kid. He's only 21, so he is still a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And look how big he is. He hasn't even grown into his real man strength yet. That's a couple years from the road. And he is, all he kept talking about was, I can't wait to learn from Cam Hayward. And this on a day when his mom was dying, right? Very emotional day, but he wants to get to work with Cam Hayward, Cam, you gotta approach veterans a little bit. Cam, James Harrison, you gotta approach him a lot to get
Mm-hmm.
his help. He's got to see that you care. Cam, just nudge him a little bit, and he'll open up to you. Cam's gonna take this kid under his wing, and the guy from Iowa, YA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Yaya.
Oh,
YA.
we'll just call him Piddle.
Yeah.
Um, he was buddies with Logan Lee. I don't know if either one of you met Logan Lee last year, but he's a no-nonsense guy. He quit soda pop. Like someone dared him if he could quit soda pop for a month. It's been like 17 years or something.
Wow.
Something crazy. That's how serious he is. And Black talked about how serious he is. And if you watched him rehab on the far, you wouldn't think he was injured. He had a calf injury. I don't know if they were just kind of hiding him, or I don't know. He was working hard though, and he was running hard. So I don't know if he's your backup nose tackle with Mon Adams gone and Black. Roy, tell me more about the tape when we get down into talking about Blackmore. I was still talking about general team, but the culture. Who else? Kaleb Johnson seems like a really great mindset. Sawyer is a captain, of the national championship team. Howard was the quarterback of the national championship team. You just look at that guy and you could tell he's got great character. Carson Bruner, great character. The kid they drafted last, he
Dante
said, "I
Kent.
can't wait to get to the Steelers, man." I thought someone told me he went to Dowington. That was Howard.
That was Howard, yeah.
But I thought somebody else said Dowington, and I was going to ask him if he was teammates with Howard at all. So I was a little surprised he had that yinzer to him. I said, "Boy, you use the dialect, but you're from the other side of the state." I'm from Harrisburg, man.
Which, which he was actually a team captain too, Jim
Oh,
Dante Kemp
good,
at Central
good.
Michigan. So, like you said, it's peppered all through there. And then, Jack Sawyer. I mean, you don't have to look no further than the planting of the flag and being able to stand up there as well for Ohio State. That to me, that's bringing back a little bit of the Steeler way and the tradition maybe that we've been falling
Yeah.
away from that everybody's been talking about. You're getting these program builders back inside the building with the veterans that were still around when that was a part of the culture. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping with big things here, with the ability to stick to a plan as well. I know the outside
Yeah.
looking in with all the noise of the quarterbacks that were on the board. It was nice to see them be able to follow through with renewing the trenches, like you say, and refreshing it there.
Just to tap out on the enhanced culture, who's big on that is Matt Steele.
Hmm.
Um, and he wanted Pickens gone. What did he write in his last column? If Pickens isn't gone, I'm not renewing NFL ticket, I think he wrote. Well, they tried. They tried. My understanding is they couldn't get more than a fourth, so they didn't trade him. But Matt is having a baby today,
Oh,
and I haven't heard yet. Otherwise, he'd be on with us because I thought he'd love to talk about the enhanced culture. I think, and he did. He said, "I'd love to talk about a great draft like that." So he's excited. But I said, "No, you be with mom and baby." And I haven't heard whether they've had the baby yet. So anyway, uh, congratulations uh, for
the
whenever
Cecil
it
family.
happens.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Congratulations to them guys. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Congrats, Matt, if you're watching this here. And that's a good little aerial overview of the draft. But let's get into it. Let's go pick by pick. I think it's important to talk about, what each player brings to the table and application to the team. Now we'll start with Harmon. I don't think that surprised anybody that it was going to be a defensive lineman, and he was on the board there at 21. They snagged him, and he's got that Steelers DNA according to Tomlin.
Yeah, the leadership was there, and then like I highlighted him the last time I was on with you guys. He has the quickness and the strength. That's a hard profile for a guy at 6'5", 325, 329, whatever he's listed at. Heavy hands. He's able to two gap. He's able to penetrate. That's a rare combination here. I know a lot of teams, late in the process, we were flagging him for a shoulder injury. Well, it's nothing that they weren't comfortable with. That's why you bring these guys in for their visits, mostly for the medical stuff. So Harmon to me was a home run pick at 21. They're staying home, adding that type of character with that combination of a skill set there.
They passed on Jackson Dart, right? And Jackson Dart has some tools and could have been a possibility. And my thinking on the quarterback situation is I don't know their intellect. I don't know what they know. And a lot of times that's hard for me to criticize quarterback picks because the Steelers had him in, right?
Yep.
Well, the Steelers had him in. They know what he knows. That's the question with Dart is because he looks so programmed. He doesn't really read the field, and
Hmm.
that's not to say he can't. I don't know, but when you watch the tape, that's something I've got to know first. So hey, maybe the Steelers weren't happy with his instincts, his intellect, his knowledge. I don't know. I'm just saying that. Uh, but they did have him in. He was one of their first guys. Harmon, it was funny when someone asked Tomlin, uh, I know this guy's a first round pick. Does he have anything he has to work on, coach? It's like, it's a 21-year-old kid who has everything to work
Yeah.
on. He didn't say that. He just said, well, we'll work on some stuff. But, you know, they don't bring him in like, oh, this kid knows everything. We don't have to teach him much. It's the grind will begin. And he looks like and sounds like the kind of guy who's going to absorb all he can. And like I talked about with Camp, learning from Cam. Pass rushing type, even pro football focus gave the Steelers a B plus overall. And it's I mean, that's kind of grades I would give
Hmm.
the team because I take into account they didn't have a second round pick. You could even say that their second round pick was the receiver,
Yeah.
Metcalf.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a second round pick. They didn't move around. They didn't have a lot of picks. And a lot of times you give the high grade to Cleveland because they had 100 picks. It's
Yeah,
what you do with your picks, right?
Yeah.
right.
They, by the way, gave Cleveland C plus.
I think that was being gracious to him because I don't know how you watch that video when they made the selection of Shador Sanders. That to me looked like Kevin Stefanski's going to be getting on the phone with his agent saying, "You need to start booking me visits for next offseason," because the GM was just barely
Yeah,
golf clapping, and it was like, "Yep, Haslam definitely made that call to stop the slide after taking a guy in the third round."
but why would he? Is the league going to help him get rid of Deshaun Watson, or did he not want the Steelers to get him?
I that very well could have been at that point, Jim. That they knew the Steelers would be at that point one of the teams that were going to be taking a quarterback for the end of the draft, and he didn't want him in Pittsburgh. But I don't know. That to me would just I don't know. Cleveland, that's hard for me to stomach or go. You have your coach walk into that room having a third round draft pick and then Shador there as a fifth. And, if you would have flip flopped them guys around, maybe you could have justified a little more. But I don't know. It was a weird draft weekend for quarterbacks in
It
total.
must have been a weird draft weekend to watch on TV with Kuiper losing his mind, I understand. I
Yeah.
mean, we're in our room, we're all bantering. The sound is down on the TV. You just wait for the names to come in and you make your own commentary.
Mhm. Yeah, and he
But
wasn't he wasn't the only one. I mean, there was multiple networks. It was just I felt bad for the kids that were getting drafted because they didn't get the talk that they should have deserved, when they're
every
getting
time I
drafted.
turn on the radio on the way home, it's a nonstop. One kid. He seemed like a nice kid to me, but I never met him. Seemed nice, gregarious. Can you imagine? The slide is one thing. And
Yeah.
then you end up in Cleveland. Oh,
Kenny
nobody's
Pickett.
happy that you're there. They have five other quarterbacks. So anyway, as for Harmon, I look at Benton and Hayward to be the starting defensive tackles in, let's just call it their base defense, which is their nickel.
Yeah.
They use the sub package more than the base. So it's weird, but and I look for Harmon to be rotating, working into the rotation, and when they need a nose tackle, it sounds like Benton's going to be that guy, and then Harmon comes on the field to join Cam in the three down in short yardage.
Yeah. So let's not go in sequential order. Let's just stick with the defensive line theme here, and let's jump down to Black. I'm not going to try the first name yet. I need some practice. But let's
Okay,
talk about how he fits into this rotation. Massive, massive dude. And he's wearing black and gold still because he was at Iowa.
let's help Jeremy with this one first. It's really easy.
Yeah.
Do you remember Y.A. Tittle? Do you
Yes.
remember the name?
The name, I remember the name. Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
That's his
Y.A.
name. Yep. YA.
Okay.
I mean, it's actually Y.A., but Y.A. works. So go with that one.
Hey, okay.
Don't ever say Yaya on this show.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Even Brett Kiesel announced it Yaya on the draft
Oh,
there.
did he?
Yeah, he announced it as Yaya, and it's like I'm sure when you were named that, you're used to wearing that sometimes, and you have to correct people. But yeah, YA, he's a big, monstrous defensive lineman from Iowa. You don't get a lot of pass rush juice there, but when the guy's able to keep his pad level low, he's a juggernaut at the point of attack. He got long arms, almost, I think it was 35-inch or right around there, arms, about an 83-inch wingspan in total, massive hands, big lower body. Like he's able to hold the point of attack in two gap, keep those linebackers free to be able to penetrate. You're just not getting a lot of pass rush, which is where you're at here in the fifth round. You're looking at him probably more of a nose, but can slide out there to that 4-eye or even, 5 technique if you want. But you're not going to really feature him there in the sub packages. He's going to be, as Jim says, the opposite of the sub package. Your pure running downs, you're going to probably see him and utilize him in that facet.
Well, Carl Dunbar said he can play nose, but we've got a nose. He was pretty adamant. I think he came in wanting to make that point, but I thought Benton got pushed around by the Ravens
Yeah. I,
and Mon Adams did too.
Yeah, they're the more penetrating style, the one techniques, the guys you think of like Jay Ratliff back with the Cowboys, the upfield pin your ears back instead of the Casey Hamptons, what we were used to back in the day, the zero techs holding it, the Joel Steeds, and being able to let the guys eat, and we'll see. We're going to see if that's going to be something what, like you say, the coaching staff wants to use Benton. I think Benton's best in that penetrating style of three tech in the sub package, more in the pass rush and letting this guy come in for 20 plays a game at most, 20, 25 plays to where they're obvious rush downs or early downs. And then maybe you go an all young front and let Cam Hayward lessen his amount of snaps and let him be able to be doing work on third downs late in the season a little more instead of have to always playing the run downs early on.
I liked CJ. Was his last name Stewart? CJ
West from Indiana.
CJ West from Indiana. Yep. And he was a fire plug. I really liked him a lot. But you think about Black, he's almost 6'6", 35-inch arms. Okay, Daniel McCullers had all that too. This guy, just talking to him and looking at him and seeing how hard he worked to gain his weight, and knowing that his close friend is Logan Lee, who's a disciplined wrestler, lunatic type, hard-working dude. This is not Daniel McCullers. So maybe he wouldn't have some of the natural skills that Daniel had, but 35-inch arms, 6'6", in the middle of the pocket. CJ West is never going to bat passes down, right?
Right. He might be able to push the pocket, but as far as just pure, planet theory, there's only so many guys that are that big that can do that many things. And yeah, and for me, I'm not completely, sold that there isn't more in the tank as a pass rusher. He just wasn't asked to do a lot of it. So he doesn't have a lot of that quickness off the ball, but who's to say he can't push the pocket as a pure power rusher as well if he gets a chance here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And sticking with Iowa, wasn't the only Iowa player.
You keep changing. Yeah, go ahead. Go with Iowa.
Yeah. So, different position here, but we get a running back to replace Najee. Kaleb Johnson, that's easy enough to pronounce, but he had an explosive, productive year last year. And it looks like when he finds a seam or has an opening, he can accelerate and take it the distance.
You know what I noticed about him? He can cut without slowing down. And that was what they loved about Franco, the scouts, when they scouted Penn State. And now Franco's a big truck who could do that. But this guy does it the same thing, man. When he cuts, I mean, he can see. He's got great vision, and we all got used to watching Najee, so it's refreshing. But man, he doesn't slow down. It's boom, boom, boom. He's gone. So I think that's going to help him break some long ones too.
Yeah, he only ran a 4.60 40. So I mean, like
4.57. 4.57.
Okay, so
Le'Veon Bell was 4.6.
Right, 4.57. But when you put him on tape, he looks way faster. He's pulling away from guys, and to me, when I was scouting him, it was the ability to accelerate to top speed quickly. He gets there in like 2 steps, whereas guys sometimes have that build up speed. It's that first 10 yards, and he's able to get to the second and third level with that frame and run through arm tackles. So that's why I forget where I seen the stat, but he was the second most run after contact last year, and the only guy who's behind was Ashton Genty. So once he gets that top speed, he's able to glide through the second and third levels and run through those arm tackles. And really one of the areas that I feel he was pretty good at was catching the ball. He didn't do it a lot, but when he did get the chance, he looked like a very natural pass catcher. So the one area was more pass protection, and he didn't do a lot of it there in Iowa, but we have Jalen Warren that's excellent in that facet, so he has a great guy to learn from. You have a lot of these traits that are going to translate, especially from a running back here in the Big Ten program.
I wondered about his hands because you would watch more of him, and I wondered because his lack of receptions at Iowa meant nothing to me. You watch that offense once or twice, and you can't blame it on him. So you say he has good natural hands then, huh?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, Jim, is taking all that into account. he was the Iowa offense last year, and they
Right.
still weren't able to stop him. He put up the big and gaudy numbers that he put up, breaking all them tackles. They didn't have the greatest offensive line. The defense knew he was coming and still was able to break tackles, have a lot of big games, a lot of big gains too. I believe he was second or third most in the class for 20 plus yards run as well. So that was something for a guy that's 4'5'7". Maybe you scratch your head. You're looking at guys like Bashaw Tootin or these bigger explosive backs. With his frame, he was still able to have a lot of big plays in his toolbox.
Well, hey, that's why you take running backs early is when they're big and still give you the home run threat.
Hmm.
And you run out of those guys quickly. Some of the guys you're talking about, Basil, he's a home run threat, but he's not big. And he's
Nope.
not gonna carry it 20 times without fumbling either.
Right.
But I don't know, Jeremy, if you were going to go to the other Iowa guy that Roy wrote about this morning in his excellent undrafted free agent article. Did you know there's another Hawkeye here?
I did, and let's go ahead and segue. We're non-linear. This is the non-linear episode.
Yeah, Sebastian Castro. This is a guy you want to definitely keep eyes on when it comes training camp time. A lot of draft services list him as a safety. He's been a nickel corner probably throughout the last 3 years here. He's not the fastest guy, but when you put him on the film, he's fluid. He has good footwork. He's able to stay in pace and in phase with slot receivers. The instincts are there, and the guy is gritty when it comes time for run defense. So he has willingness and good instincts to take the ball away. He's got everything you want in a good solid nickel corner. It's just that time speed is what killed him there from Iowa. But you put on the tape, he was one of their best defenders for the last 2 to 3 years there in Iowa.
I mean, does he look like Mike Hilton when you watch him?
He doesn't have the blitzing ability is what Hilton does. But as far as coverage, he's a little better in coverage than where Hilton was coming in. So
That
that's
Iowa defense was something else. I mean, because Kaleb Johnson couldn't score, if Kaleb Johnson wasn't scoring, well, Kaleb Johnson only had really one great year.
hmm
His other stats were good, but last year was his breakout. Before that, that Iowa offense was just hideous. And so the Steelers now have three Iowa defenders and using that as a farm team like Wisconsin and Ohio State even
Yep.
anymore.
Yeah. It's the Big Ten episode too, which is, hey, let's stick in the Big Ten because we got two Ohio Staters, two Buckeyes to hit on here. Jack Sawyer, we mentioned him a bit there at Edge. What does he bring to the table?
For me, Jack Sawyer, that was a value after value pick. This guy, the last 2 years, I think it was 29 tackles for loss, 23, 20 and a half sacks. The guy he doesn't just generate pressure. He's not the Myles Garrett pressure generator. He finishes plays. He's a finisher. He knows how to, create turnovers as well. Power player, really good run defender as well. He just doesn't have the greatest length, and he doesn't have the best first step quickness. But that frenetic energy, the hand usage, he's able to create himself a real value pick here. I really think he has a chance to, as far as the ceiling of a type of player, I think he could get maybe to a Highsmith level if he gets a chance to continually work into this system as the 3-4 in the attacking front. I think he has a really high upside here in Pittsburgh.
Well, I mean, I think of Kevin Green. Kevin Green learned how to pass rush,
Hmm.
and maybe this guy can too. But Kevin Green had that size and bulk. He was the elephant end type,
Hmm.
a defensive end, maybe in college, if I recall right. But that 260-pound guy opposite Greg Lloyd, who was your pure rusher. Kevin Green ended up in the Hall of Fame because of his sacks, though. But
Hmm.
he was a big, sturdy, run stuffing type. And maybe Sawyer can develop those pass rush moves, but they want that. They wanted that opposite, Herbig when they're giving a rest to Herbig's 240. This
Yes.
guy's 260.
Yep.
And Preston Smith was 265, and Preston Smith was inactive in that Ravens playoff game. I don't know why.
Mhm.
And the Steelers maybe are kicking themselves too because that was part of the problem. And when you give up 299 yards rushing, it's all part of the problem. And you can see the problems add up. And not having that elephant type pass rusher, a defensive end, when you're running basically a 4-3,
Yep.
you really can't have skinny outside linebackers putting their hand down and pretending they're defensive ends. So you got to mix and match a little bit. And I think Sawyer's going to help that first of all as he learns to pass rush. But when I saw he didn't run his 40 and I saw his arms were 31 and a half, um, I did see he's almost as tall as TJ, and that surprised me, and about the same weight.
Mhm.
But I expected, a fourth round guy. I didn't expect to see much as far as athleticism. I turned on the tape. He's got good hip action. He's agile. He's not just blocky.
Mhm.
He's not just going to stuff the run. He is going to. I don't know that he's going to be a great pass rusher, but he's going to make plays. And I think that's been his MO at Ohio State. Look what he did against Texas. Texas was moving in for the tie. Who knows what would have happened? That was early in the playoffs, right?
Yep.
Like
Yeah, that was the
the
semifinal.
quarterfinals.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
might have ended Ohio State right there, but he made the play. Strip sack, return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up a great point, Jim, about having that second wave of pass rushers. Now you have it where you don't have to keep Highsmith or Watt on the field with Herbig. Now you can actually have a second wave and let them guys get a little bit fresher for the late season drive and have a guy that's, they're not just going to be running over or targeting one side of the field. You can shut down at least once and maybe have an overhang defender help Herbig out on a little lighter side there of the box.
I don't want to criticize Herbie's run defense too much.
No.
He's better than his size would indicate.
Right. But if you're facing him up against an offensive tackle play after play,
Yeah.
the disadvantage. But you know what I mean? Like if it's a second wave here where we can keep them guys fresh, and now you have a guy who can come backside or at least be able to create that pressure, and it's a good problem to have for a second wave.
Yeah. And
And
this,
his leadership and his pedigree. After his freshman season of high school, he was a tight end, played as a freshman at Pickerington North.
Hmm.
And as the season went on, they moved him into defensive end, and he kept getting better and better. By the end of the season, Penn State and Michigan had already offered him. And then Ohio State stepped in. And he said he knew he was going there, but he wanted to play it cool for like 6 months. So he didn't declare until his sophomore year. Then by his senior year, he was named Ohio's #1 high school recruit. So he was a 5-star recruit. He's been through all of this. That's high pedigree.
yeah. And the Steelers have a knack for drafting linebackers out of Ohio State, so we'll see if he follows suit there. Just from the little bit of tape I watched, very solid against the run, sets the edge nicely, and he's a gamer. He's a football player, so you got to love that. But let's go to the other Ohio Stater, Will Howard, and I'm gonna put this out there. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch the QB analysis that he did with John Gruden.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that was pretty. Jim, if you get a chance, check that out on YouTube.
Well, tell me about it.
I mean, it's X's and O's, and Gruden, he can't help himself. He's getting fired up. He's telling Howard, he's like, call like you call it in a game, and he calls it sitting at the table. He's like, get your ass up there, stand up, do it. And so he's getting into it, man, and he's giving him all these advanced route concepts that he's not familiar with. These are from packages that Gruden ran. And then he's like rapid fire. He's like, all right, well, what would you call against this defense? What would you do in this down and distance? And Howard is just like
He's
nailing it.
on it. He's on
Yeah.
it.
So
Yeah.
his mental acumen was on full display. And anybody who's watching this, go check that out. You could YouTube it, Gruden and Will Howard. But little known story here, Jim. So when I was principal at Kennett High School, we played Downingtown West during the time that Howard would have been there. Now I don't remember him playing. I know he got injured, but Downingtown West is a juggernaut out here in Eastern PA in
It's
terms of high
it's one of those massive Philadelphia suburban schools,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they're dominant. So he definitely played some high level football. But then it's just interesting too his story, moving from Kansas to Ohio State, and he's a winner. There's definitely some excitement around this guy. His mechanics look great, by the way, too. I thought his footwork, just again a little bit of tape that I watched. Am
At
I
the
correct?
combine, he was hideous,
I
though.
know. Yeah,
Throwing against air.
Yeah.
right.
But I wonder if that's part of the reason he fell to the 6th round.
That's 100%, Jim. A lot of this is a guy that you can't the value of him is when you put him inside the hash marks when it's game time. He's not a good tester, but just like Jeremy was saying there, that was quite impressive. I had to go watch the Gruden class with him, and his intellect and his fire was on display there easily. Literally, Gruden was like, "You have the size of Josh Allen. You got one of the biggest arms in the draft. You run a similar 40-yard dash. Why is nobody talking about you being the number one overall pick?" And he goes, "Well, sir," he goes, "I'm going to make sure all 31 other teams of the ones that didn't draft me are going to regret not taking me." So, but the cadences, as he said, like his intellect and his ability to show, you know, full field reads, be able to audible at the line of scrimmage, both at Kansas State and Ohio State was there. The accuracy issues is kind of one of the other things that pegged him. Like you said, Jim, not only at the combine, but he'll go through stretches where it'll leave him for a little bit. But as far as the deep ball, he threw one of the best deep balls in the class. The arm strength's there, the rushing ability's there, the intellect's there. I really like that pick in the sixth round. In my mock, I had him in the third for us because I thought he
Yeah,
was going to be going a little earlier. Uh,
but you did right. I initially had this guy in the sixth until I took a closer look.
yeah.
You had to double think it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did because I thought that was the guy they wanted because of the pedigree. And he goes in on the Gruden class here, and I read some other stuff about him at Kansas State that he really took it personal when they brought in Adrian Martinez
Yeah,
from Nebraska.
yeah,
And to be able to sit there in the day and age of the NIL and the different era of
yeah,
transfer portal, for him to sit there and work his way back up into a key role in that team and then
yeah.
continually lead that to me shows a lot of leadership. And whatever his upside may be, I think he may start games for us, not knowing if it's this year, but that's a good problem to have and a good guy to develop on our team here for long term. He definitely has every intangible and physical trait that you want to be developed.
Well, he didn't transfer to Ohio State until he was a graduate student.
Yep.
So it wasn't like he was running away from being a backup I mean, he was getting a lot of playing time because Martinez was getting hurt
Yep.
every in and out, in and out, in and out. So he chose Ohio State because he wanted to compete for a national title,
I can't fault the guy for that.
and he won it.
Right.
And after that Michigan game, he got up off the deck. There's so many things you got to look. There's a lot of Mason Rudolph in his story too. Mason had a really high psychological profile for getting up off the deck. And look at him, he's come back. He doesn't get petty, and so I have a feeling these two will hit it off. And Aaron Rodgers can come in and do his thing, but those two guys will be working together. I think they'll be staying out on the field probably.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch those relationships unfold there with Rudolph, and if Rodgers happens to come on board. And then that brings us to first seventh round pick. I love this guy's movement, his lateral movement, and I reading some of the draft scouts profiling Carson Bruner from Washington, linebacker. They said he doesn't have a lot of athleticism, but I thought he moved pretty well just from the tape that I watched there.
Yeah.
I was I found myself in that group that didn't think he was a real good mover, but you watch him in coverage on tape, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. I think he could, could. There's a good chance he develops into more than a special teamer. You can cover, and he's got the toughness to plug the run. So he's more athletic than I think a lot of myself and others are giving him credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things for me too. Like I went into watching the tape thinking that he's going to be a Tyler Matakavich style player, special
Yeah.
teams only, captain. And then, the coverage ability was there, the fluidity in coverage and man coverage especially. The instincts are definitely there. And then at his pro day, he exploded. He ran a 4.58 40, and then it was his agility times, the short shuttle and the three cone. He ran a sub 7 3 cone, which for a linebacker, that's really good fluidity. So the tackling ability, he's a sure tackler. He doesn't fall off. The instincts are there both in coverage and in run fits. I think that was a home run, as far as a pick in the seventh round.
I think you had him on your very first mock, didn't you?
I did. I did.
Why'd you overthink this?
There's a lot of them, Jim, that I overthink that it was just like, I knew they were going to be hitting some, and it's like, well, are they really going to spend a draft pick on Mark Bruner's son? I should have known better. They were going to take him, and it was on his own merits, not just because he was Mark Bruner's son.
And, it's a great story. It really is. The fact he's a seventh rounder, that story gets lost where he went to the cabin that Mark was drafted and sat in the exact same seat Mark sat when he was drafted. And the fact that Mark was let out of the war room to go be with his son across the country. I remembered right after they picked Carson, I remembered I was going to be, my plan the first day was look up Mark and see how bad he was going to miss being with his son.
Yeah.
And then when they drafted, I'm like, I haven't seen him all weekend. Usually you see them walking by
Right.
into the cafeteria. And Mark's a good guy. He'll always say hello. Plus, he really loved my interview of Carson at the combine when Carson said, it wasn't all my dad. My mom made sure I learned how to long snap. So I asked Danny Smith, because they brought Danny Smith into the room after the pick with the new linebackers coach. I said, Danny, he can long snap. He goes, don't know, don't care. We got a long snapper. It's like he hears this kind of stuff all the time. Like James Harrison, I can long snap. I can, but I told him after, I go, yeah, his mom made sure he learned how to long snap.
Wow.
But, I couldn't be happier. I texted Mark and he said it was a huge day for his family. He's so happy for his son. And I haven't talked to him, but I'm looking forward to seeing him in the spring practices.
I'm noticing a trend too. We talked earlier about, culture builders, building the culture. There's a lot of good stories from these individual players here. And, what that means or how that, transposes to their future performance in Pittsburgh, we don't know, but it definitely makes for some interesting tales here. And then brings us to the final pick in the seventh round, Dante Kent, cornerback out of Central Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Roy on this, but just his numbers strike me as a linear player, straight line guy.
Yeah, he's kind of clunky in his transitions. He played a lot of outside at Central Michigan, but he's going to probably go more to the nickel.
How can he do that if he's so linear?
To me, it's the physicality he shows in the running game. That's where he's going to make hay. He's going to be one of those forward playing players, more of a zone drop kind of guy than he's going to be a man to man. I just think his tackling ability is going to be what they're looking at here. He also has really good field vision. I'll give him that as far as a punt returner. He has a pretty decorated career at Central Michigan. I know he took one back last year. I forget what team it was against, but he had a punt return for touchdown. He did run a 4.38 so he does have some good straight line speed there, but he's only 5'10", 189. So he doesn't have the longest arms, but he's willing to get dirty and run defense. That's mostly what I took away from his film, is just that he wasn't afraid to stick his hand in the plow. He's better moving forward than in strict man coverage, and he's feisty. So he has that punt return ability that maybe they want to add into the mix here as well.
All right. I know we went pretty long here, but I did want to hit on one more of the undrafted rookie free agents, the fullback or the tight end, wherever you want to classify him, out of South Alabama, DJ Thomas Jones. It's the largest signing bonus for a non-Q quarterback for the Steelers. Roy, did you take a look at any of his tape?
Yeah, he's a really good blocker on the move. They had him mostly as like a wing tight end, lot on the move type stuff. He has really good speed. He's a really good pass catcher. He was really good and efficient inside the red zone. So it's kind of exciting to see a guy that's able to move block in this offense with Kaleb Johnson and Warren being behind them there, that we can get out on the peripherals and make blocks there at the second level, and then also contribute something in the passing game. So that was a guy, especially I put the antenna up when they brought Kyle Juszczyk in. that's kind of fullback that I think they want in their system here, not just the strict ISO blocker, more of the wing type. And he was doing that quite well while he was at South Alabama. He originally was at Mississippi State, didn't get a lot of run there, but then the last few years he was a Mobile kid, so he went back to South Alabama, back home, and they played him a lot on the wing there, like I said, move tight end, but he was really a lead blocker a lot in their system there, and did it quite well.
I know the pit kicker's very good, but there's really not much room for him, so we won't talk too much about him. Any other free agents, or Roy, that you want to quickly tell us about?
So the biggest one that I wanted to talk about was Rock Taylor, the receiver from Memphis. I thought for sure the Steelers would have went out and drafted a receiver here, but Rock Taylor was a guy. They listed him at 6'3" whenever he was at Memphis. He really was about 6'1", closer to 6'2". This guy is that bully ball type player. He's able to get open, but it's after the catch. It's hard to get him knocked off balance. He can run through some arm tackles, and he's able to be a predator at the apex point. So that's a guy in the Memphis offense. With Hennigan, he was like their go-to guy, especially in the red zone. He had almost 1,000 yards receiving. That's a guy that maybe on the tail end, if he can show some special teams prowess there, covering kicks, maybe he's a 6th, 7th receiver, practice squad, maybe slip in the end. Really good and quality player. I believe he was like a 4.49 type runner, so it wasn't like pedestrian speed there, but he's just a big physical outside receiver, and he's not afraid to run through people and blocking. So,
All right, man, we covered it all here. And Roy, you were on it, man. We talked about Will Howard hitting all those cadences and calls. We brought up a player, man. You were just crushing it.
He picks up blitzes pretty well too.
Hey, I try, guy. It's a labor of love. I'm just appreciative of having the platform. I told Jim I'm appreciative to have a platform to share some of my scouting knowledge and be able to be a part of something better than just myself here.
Yeah, Roy, thank you so much for all your work. You really made it easy for me to recover my health I mean, not that next year you're going to do any less. I'm kind of liking this. I'm kind of liking this. I was getting to a point watching so much tape that they all started looking like it looks like sometimes it all runs together and nobody can help you.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's different here. If you watch a good player long enough, you start to see his flaws, right?
Yep.
So all the lines were getting blurred. So it's nice that you stepped in. You still have that fresh young mind.
It's called scouting fatigue at times, Jim, and then sometimes you just got to go do something else. But we're like a good front office here. You're my cross checker, so you can keep me in balance whenever maybe a guy I'm too high on. You can be like, I don't know, but if I see exactly that, so
I can talk you off the Carson Bruners and tell you to falsely move up Will Howard. You had this stuff down on January 22nd, man.
Yep. Scouting fatigue.
Good stuff. Well, the viewers are going to walk away here educated with no fatigue whatsoever. They're going to feel energized about this upcoming Steelers season. We want to thank all of you for watching out there. Please make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already, and we will see you back here for another episode of the Steel City Insider Podcast. Jim, Roy, you guys have a great week.
All right, guys, take care. Thanks for all your help, Roy, and congratulations again to Matt.
Congratulations, Matt. See you guys.